Hello and welcome to the Tolkien Society here on September 12th, 2015. A few of the other members are running a few minutes late. They called to let me know they'll be here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to leave the stream running for the moment and wait till everybody's here before we get started. For those of you who may already be tuning in, if you'd like to check out last month's meeting notes, they are on the TolkienScholars.org website, and you'll see them with a second listing down right there on the front page for the Tolkien Society August 2015 meeting notes, taken by Brian Huseland. And included there is a photo of where the Tolkien tree used to be and is now sadly just grass. And Brian, when he was in England this summer, took that photo just this summer. And we will go over those notes in detail when Brian, our Society Secretary, is here, and continue from there. Hope somebody's here. I'll be right back. Hi, go over there. Hi. Hello, welcome. We're already on the air. Yep. Okay, we have a fellow named Tom who's already joined us to do.
Yes. Here or online?
Online.
Okay, great. Awesome. Where should I sit, over here or here? Or?
Wherever you feel comfortable.
Okay. You know, Chris Cooperstein's coming or not?
I do not know. I just replaced my phone, so I don't have everybody's contact info synced up.
I did email him the notes last night too.
Okay. I have not heard from him.
So we are on the air?
We are on the air, yes.
Okay. I can watch the notes in just a second.
Great. And I already told people where they were. They wanted to read them.
Okay. Want some more likes, maybe?
Yes, go ahead and hit that button by you. What's that? Camera's right there. That's where we usually place it. Because if you want to be on camera, you should slide in just a little bit more. But if you like to be off camera, disembodied voice, that's fine.
Just
push it, yeah.
Dr. Gadget.
Oh, right, yeah, with the cat. So.
It's time, Gadget.
All right.
So, I've been watching this thing called, called Great War. Not new. That we're going over the First World War 1 week at a time, concurrent with the current date.
Oh, interesting. For a full year, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
For the full 4 years.
Wow. Wow. That's
I'm
interesting.
catching up on the backlog.
reason enough.
My Wi-Fi here.
Maybe I've got it on the laptop.
Okay. Trying to pull up the Tolkien Society website on here.
Jeremiah has dropped in.
John Meyer Burns. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent the invite to him.
Yeah, I told him to go on that last time.
Ah.
Like
well, now did you get to meet him in person when you were in England?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
Forgive me, I'm still fighting this lung thing that I got from the con. So if I start coughing, I'm going to step out or something.
You probably should avoid coffee.
Yeah, I'm not on any coffee. No, it's not in there. For all that, it's not even in the queue. The Tolkien Society's not in my queue on my TV. All right, we have, Brian's just pulling up the meeting notes. And we'll proceed from there. Yes.
It's not just Skype. That's the wall. See where that moving part is? That's where a bit of the tree
I'll
fell.
find a
broke.
concrete.
Nice. That's outrageous.
Yeah. This is the last place. Other trees would see.
Nobody.
Okay, Brian. Now I'm gonna try switching back to the webcam mic because usually that picks up better. Tom, if it's too hard to hear, please let me know and we'll play around with something else.
Okay.
Webcam mic. Usually it picks up better, but he was saying it wasn't. All right, Brian, why don't you speak?
All right. Welcome, Hill, and well met.
Let the meeting commence.
All right.
In order.
So our last meeting was in August, on the 8th of August, and it was a very interesting meeting because none of us were actually in one place at the same time. We were meeting.
Just a second. Tom, can you hear him okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you.
I'll try not to mumble.
Yes.
Welcome, Tom. This is Brian. And anyway, I'll just cut to the chase. Hawk, Brian, and Jeremiah were at our last meeting. Hawk was en route to a family reunion.
Seattle.
I was at home here in Spokane, and Jeremiah joined us from Great Britain. I had difficulty getting to the Google Hangout live, but hopefully nobody else has that same trouble.
If I remember correctly, I was hosting it over my cell phone, wireless, and I left my laptop running in the car
Yes, you
while I
did.
went to the reunion.
Yes. Yeah, I finally got on like 3 minutes before you had to leave, so
Yeah.
I felt a bit lonely talking. And then, so yes, an empty car was one companion. You didn't get a lot of answers back, one hand
Yeah.
clapping and all that.
Yeah.
And then, but Jeremiah and I kind of kept up this conversation.
Good.
And but I was the one talking, and he was actually sending Google.
Right. And then
messages
voicing
back.
for it.
Yeah. So, okay, so Hawk reviewed the last meeting in July at Tolkien Mood 11. Brian joined on vacation from the UK. That's where I was in July. Marty Kirschner from the Wagnerian Society of California presented part 2 of the Ring Cycle summary in graphic charts. That's the best way to explain it. And later on, Hawk mentioned later on that day, or that weekend, Michael Martinez and Hawk actually had a Middle Earth talk show episode 51. And so that's worthwhile going back and listening to. Anyway, that was part of the Tolkien Mood. And I'm assuming that your live audience then was the Tolkien Mood participants.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because remember we had downstairs.
Sure.
So.
So you didn't mention really what you guys covered. Do you want me just to keep on going, or did you want to cover that?
So we covered, our theme was giants in Middle Earth, because that was the theme for the convention. And so we covered that, and then we of course tied in Marty's background with the Wagnerian ring cycle, because both Tolkien and Wagner borrowed heavily from the Eddic, and there were some similarities and some differences. And for the adventures that we did with Middle Earth Society, a lot of the sources we used of Tolkien's giants weren't Middle Earth giants. They were just like Farmer Giles and Ham and such. And they were heavily Northern European giants. So that was the main topic. And then we covered other topics as well.
So a 4-foot person and a 6-foot tall person.
Yeah,
Very true. Very true. Yeah.
But remember, Tolkien described it like he showed the drawing he did with the cow squished in the footprint flat. So he was pretty specific about how big a giant he was talking about.
Right.
So for the adventure, I went with that. I said,
Sure,
okay,
sure.
how long is a cow? And then you can see from his drawing it was a little bit more than the cow's height.
I've never seen this drawing.
Oh, it's in Farmer Giles.
You have to find it. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember that drawing actually.
Okay.
But while you're looking at that, so
Yes.
yeah, Richard, that's a good point. Like for example, the hobbits call humans the big people. Yeah. So I guess we're looking at bigger people.
Historically, it's pretty small. And many of them were actually Vikings. So
True.
Well, and my friend David Tongi at the Kung Fu School always calls me his Numenorian friend. I'm 6'7", so. Okay, I almost have it. I'm in the right section.
Especially if
There's the
you're
dragon.
Especially if you're struggling to find the right amount of nutrients, your growth is stunted.
Very true.
Your average height is
Come on, where's the swish cow? Boy, he spent a lot of time on dragons.
Okay, so then, and then there was some kind of connection.
Well, here's one picture.
Michael Martinez mentioned something. I think he said talk about the two bards connection. I don't know.
Yes.
You want to read? Go over that?
So the two bards are members of Dead Gentleman and that one. Okay, Dead Gentleman and Zombie Orcas Entertainment. They've been in the Gamers movies and many others, and then they also have their own Two Bards podcast on twobards.com, and they have a Patreon you can subscribe to help them get better equipment, etc. And they talk about various things like technology, gaming, fantasy stuff, science fiction, different things like that. Typical geeky topics. And they were kind enough to be special guests on at the Tolkien Group over the web, and Michael Martinez basically moderated them kind of as a panel.
Was that actually at Tolkien movie?
That was at Tolkien Group.
As part of your episode or something different?
That was a special broadcast with the Two Bards with Michael Martinez.
On Sunday?
That was Saturday.
Okay, when did you do your radio talk show then?
Radio talk show was Sunday night. That was also closing ceremonies.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's really nice to do that. That's Andy Dobrowski and Scott C. Brown. Scott C. Brown right now is performing in a theater production over in the Seattle area of, oh, now I'm going to forget. Awesome. Oh, I can see the photo. Just talked about it yesterday. Anyway, go ahead.
Apparently your memory doesn't have
No worries. Okay. Just make sure we get in line. That's fine, because right now I'm just reading notes that I have cached. Okay, Jeremiah commented about the format. As you go back and watch the YouTube footage of it, Hawk's driving.
Who are you having trouble hearing, Tom? Myself or Brian? All of us. Are you hearing background noise from the air conditioner? Well, usually
Is that keyboard clicking or is he?
that's him typing. We can hear him typing.
Something clicked.
Yeah, that's interesting. Usually, it picks up. Well, I'm going to turn off the AC and see if that helps. Yeah, we used to use headsets. I think we're just going to need to be louder.
Is that better, Tom?
A little.
Yeah. So we just need to not drop our voices as we're used to doing. So.
Theater in the round. Project.
Yes, Jeremiah commented, for the record, this is the most amusing format you've used so far. Brian was finally able to join with much embarrassment, and I read notes from the July meeting. At this point, Hawk and Katie had to go, so I was...
Oh, right, because I was trying to do the show while driving.
Yes.
Or the broadcast, that's right.
Typical multitasker, yeah. So, anyway, I carried on as best I could and with Jeremiah, and so here's what we talked about in the last meeting.
To Kill a Mockingbird is the play in right now.
Oh, I see.
So.
Okay, so back to the notes.
Yes.
Brian mentioned the Huseland family's hunt for the site of the Black Pine of Oxford. My family was on vacation in England, and the Black Pine it's in the Botanical Garden in Oxford, and and it's basically a famous old tree that the last known photograph of Tolkien was taken next to it, and it was a tree he really loved. There's a link in the notes to what the tree would look
That's
like.
on the TolkienScholars.org website.
And I think it's on Wikipedia as well. So there's photos out there you can kind of compare. But Hawk has up on the screen here. This is all that's left. We were hoping to see a stump because last year they had to cut down the tree based on a storm where there had been this massive, this huge, heavy limb had dropped and actually broken this wall. And that might not seem like a big deal to us, but the wall was actually older than the tree. The wall was built in the late 1600s, and so and the tree was, relatively young, only like, late 1700s.
I guess that's why that center section is so shiny.
Yeah, exactly. So after it broke the wall, they started really worrying about all the people who would come to find the tree, and they thought, what if one of these gigantic
Reliability.
1-ton branch, falls on
But
something?
they could have done, like Old Faithful. They could have fenced off an area.
And plenty of trees in England
Yes.
are like that, where
Yes.
they have them like the major oak in Sherwood Forest. It's a gigantic 1,000-year-old tree. But for whatever reasons, this is a botanical garden, and with the blessing of the Tolkien Society, they kind of basically said, look, we feel like there's some disease in the tree as well.
And it turned out to be.
And which was accurate because I think it was shock last year when they had to cut it down. But trees have a natural life, and this one probably would have lived for maybe another 50 years.
And did you read from his when his neighbor cut down the tree?
No.
Remember, I did a whole essay
That's right.
on Tolkien and his love of trees.
That's right.
And that
That's
is,
right.
if it's not on the Tolkien Scholars website, it'd be on the TolkienMoot.org website,
Yeah. So
which
just,
was read at Tolkien Society in 2011.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole topic of its own.
Yeah.
But he did love trees, and this was a really magnificent example of one. And some people think it was the inspiration for the Ents. I don't know where that is from, but the point is that they decided that they would have to cut it down, leaving like an 8-foot high or 10-foot high stump. And the idea was, how can we now use this as maybe something else that would be a memorial into, for the significance of the spot and everything. And so they really wanted to do that. But when they found, and we didn't know this off the internet, it's when my daughters went in, we didn't have extra money for us all to go in. So I sent in the 3 girls, my minions, they went in because they cost less for kids. And they went in, my teenagers, and they found the spot. And what happened was that they couldn't find it. You're looking for this massive big tree, or at least a tall stump, right? That'd be recognizable.
Right.
But unfortunately, they had to ask somebody to say, where is this tree? And they said, oh, it's right over, here's where it used to be. But the trunk was diseased, so they had to actually, it was going to rot, and so they had to remove it before it rotted away so they could perhaps use the wood for something. I don't know now what they're going to do with it, but in true fashion for the gardens, they completely erased its, they just,
there's no sign. It's just
no, they put sod there, and the only sign that where it used to be, and you can actually see that photograph with the tree in it,
right,
or at least the stump from last fall when they cut the tree down. You can see the same wall, and then compare it. But it's like, man, where's your point here? It's hard.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was a little disappointing, but it's the way it was. So that was an interesting connection with Tolkien. While we were in Oxford, we also saw across from there was Magdalen College, which I should get back to my notes. Hawk, did you have something you want to share?
Well, so one thing you said, you wondered where the whole tree in Enston came from. So he started with giants as tall as trees.
Mm-hmm.
Then remember this whole giants thing. Then they became the tree men, but they were still men, but they were just as tall as trees, which then evolved eventually into a tree-ish giant, which became the Ents.
Nice.
So that's how it evolved. But so he says in letter, this one's a long one, 165, long topic, lots of stuff, but I had used this in my research. He said, quote, "The ennoblement of the ignoble I find specially moving. I am obviously much in love with plants and above all trees, and always have been. And I find human maltreatment of them as hard to bear as some find ill treatment of animals." And so that's that letter. And then I'm trying to find the other one where he talks about the tree next door being cut down.
It was a really lovely old tree.
Yeah, and I had like I think an owl or something. And he talked many times in his letters to his son and such. He would often talk about what he'd observed through the window of the tree, squirrels and other things like that. And I'm having trouble finding that particular.
Just make a comment.
Yes.
Just briefly, and Richard, chime in here if you want. I think this is another cultural difference. So, like as an American, I would tend to say like, oh, okay, some people are, environmentalists and they're very much one direction, preserve everything. Some people are like, are the opposite, rabid, consumerists, and they just want to use up everything and say, look, it's no big deal, just plant more trees or whatever.
Somebody, we had a friend calling in today over Facebook quick. Rob, are you there? That was totally unexpected. I think he was trying to join, but he's doing it through Facebook rather than.
Okay.
Anyway.
So anyway,
well, in the apartment that we live in, there's this mulberry bush / tree out in back.
right.
Mom hates it because she moved in before it existed, and it was basically planted by a bird sitting on the fence.
So be sure to speak up.
And I kind of like the tree because it shades the balcony.
Right.
So, Mom doesn't want it there. She wants to kill it. I kind of like it. It's also it's a fruiting tree, so it
Right.
makes a mess of.
Well, here I have this little lot here, and I have 16 trees on my property. But I'm not a tree hugger, but I do appreciate them. And of course, with all the fires we just had this past month, and there was one of the fires just a couple miles away from here. If it had crossed the river, I would have been in danger. So, and when we were fighting some development down here, because they wanted to put in low-income housing down below for the college, I spoke with the engineer of the project. He's like, well, hillsides with trees. Just give me flat land and no trees. That's the only place people should be building houses. Instead of on hillsides and surrounded by trees, you're just going to get burned down, or he's being a completely practical engineer. That everything, like if you ever play SimCity, that's the easiest development is on the flat land. But
Like, well, we like to be near.
yeah. Well, and then a neighbor down the street inherited the house from his mother, and the first thing he did is cut down 20 100-year-old evergreens because he doesn't like the pine needles.
I know that's.
And I'm like, sell it out to somebody because this is Forest Hills.
I know that's the thing. Yeah.
Anyway, we digress.
Well, exactly. So what I was trying to get at is we tend to see things in polar opposites here somewhat, or at least I think that there's a lot of people that kind of are, black or white on that. And I think in England, it's a little bit more nuanced because the deal is we have such an incredible abundance here that we, kind of that's where we're at is, well, there's all these trees. So some people would say, well, look, we're in the Pacific Northwest. Good grief! Look, out your window, there's acres and acres.
Some people have the mistaken belief that we live in the middle of a howling wilderness.
Right. Yeah.
Some of the
People in
people
Seattle.
from
I've lived and worked in a howling wilderness.
Yes, this is not it. Yeah. But the difference is that in Britain, right, where Tolkien was raised and everything, everything has been cultivated for so long that wherever trees are, they've outlived against the odds.
Right.
They like a lot of old trees have actually grown up along fence lines and hedgerows.
Right.
And so I think it's partly a respect for the fact that they live on an island and
Their
you only
resources
have
are limited.
your resources are limited. So when you kind of a grandfather, like an old tree, it's not that you don't want to cut down any trees. Good grief, if we want wood housing or wood floors,
Right.
paper.
Yeah. No, I totally balance.
I think he had a pretty good, Anyway,
I found his reference to
Go ahead.
cut down trees since we were.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I wasn't able to be in that conversation because I could have done it then. There was a great tree. This is from Tolkien's letters. letter 241, September 8th to 9th, 1962. And it's a letter to Jane Neve. Tolkien's aunt, who was living in Wales, had been reading a proof copy of his lecture English and Welsh, delivered 1955, published 1963 in the volume Angles and the Britons and O'Donnell Lectures, and this was related to that. But in the middle of it, there was a great tree, a huge poplar with vast limbs, visible through my window even as I lay in bed. I loved it and was anxious about it. It had been savagely mutilated, some own new limbs, though of course not with the unblemished grace of its former natural self. And now a foolish neighbor was agitating to have it felled. Every tree has its enemy, few have an advocate. Too often the hate is irrational, a fear of anything large and alive, and not easily tamed or destroyed, though it may clothe itself in pseudo-rational terms. This fool, he has an asterisk here, only in this respect, hatred of trees. She was a great and gallant lady. This fool said that it cut off the sun from her house and garden, and that she feared for her house if it should crash in a high wind. It stood due east of her front door, across a wide road, at a distance nearly thrice its total height. Thus, only about the equinox would it even cast a shadow in her direction, and only in the very early morning, one that reached across the road to the pavement outside her front gate. And any wind that could have uprooted it and hurled it on her house would have demolished her and her house without any assistance from the tree. I believe it still stands where it did, though many winds have blown since. Oh, okay, wait a minute. That's a different one then. There must be another one.
Well, I'm sure that
Where
this
he
did not
talks about
happen
putting it
just
down.
once.
Anyway, I thought that was,
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Sufficient.
So,
Yes, continue.
okay, so trees, we talked about that. All right, so the walled garden is, for those who want to find the place where it wasn't, the walled garden is right across from Magdalen College. It's spelled Magdalene, and that was where actually C.S. Lewis taught English literature at Oxford before he went to Cambridge. The next thing that happened at our meeting is that Jeremiah mentioned something very worthwhile, and this is a book that right now can only be bought. It's not available in the United States, and it is a version of Tolkien's On Fairy Stories. Richard, would you put that up to the camera, please?
Sure.
It's actually edited by Verlin Flieger and a couple others.
I can't even tell which.
And
Is that
There you
good?
go,
or-
perfect. Just hold it steady there.
so yeah, that's actually a great version because what it is, it's his On Fairy Stories, but it's annotated.
Nice.
So it actually has not only notes, but it has his going through all of his old versions of that essay, which of course you know is not really an essay, it's more like a book.
Right.
And it shows which sections he took out.
Nice.
So it's actually the fullest,
Wow.
uncut version.
Oh, let's see that too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
That kind of gives you
a
bit of an idea.
visual.
Yeah, so they have they use sentences struck out, and then also whole sections or other parts that were later added in. So it's really interesting. I haven't read the whole thing. I've read most of the essay itself. It's really good. I mean, I think that if you're interested in getting into Tolkien's head and why he, as a Oxford professor, would defend fantasy, what his whole, really kind of like, before a lot of other people, I mean, I think he was really one of the first to intellectually defend fantasy literature and say why it was good. So anyway, although there were fantasy writers before him.
And Tom says it can be ordered online from various sources in the UK, Amazon, Blackwell's, etc. That's how I got mine.
That's right. Good job, Tom. Yeah, so you can get it. You just have to order it from the UK. So that's worthwhile. I would say everybody should try to get a copy of it. So I'm starting to work through it. And then, so credit to Jeremiah for tipping me off on that. He gave me a copy. Last time I mentioned that also on my family's trip to the UK, I visited C.S. Lewis's home in Oxford. And his stepson, Douglas Gresham, just happened to be there. And so it was nice. Our family got to meet him.
Nice.
And then we talked about various topics, including the radio theater versions of the Chronicles and version of Tolkien's Silmarillion, which is quite good.
What?
And that's on archive.org. And so those are MP3 files for the whole Silmarillion.
Oh, they
That's from the late 90s version.
they made it public domain.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Add that to Middle-earth Radio.
Yeah. Absolutely. You could definitely stream
I
that.
read that when I was in high school,
Right.
and I recently got a copy of it. And they chopped out all the poetry that's the Leia the Booth version, the version I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my, yeah, I have one of the early.
I think the Leia of Luthien, there is a fuller version.
Yes, in history of Middle-earth.
But see, there's several versions, and I think that's part of it is that Tolkien had kind of like a condensed version. And then
Oh,
he also
wait.
had the long version, which wasn't published until like later, wasn't it?
Well, it was like in the
my-
early 90s when I read it.
Yeah. Maybe they changed it.
That's right, Drake borrowed mine and
We
has
did
misplaced it.
Okay. Well, anyway, the link is on the notes, so anybody
Yes.
who wants to listen to the Silmarillion while you're driving or whatever, it's a great.
Yeah, that's on TolkienScholars.org.
Oh, it's an audio file, not a text.
Yeah,
Who did the reading?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. That's surprising.
It's from like 1998.
Right.
So, and then let's see. Jeremiah was anticipating highly the release of Tolkien's Kullervo in August, but we don't get it till October. Boo!
Boo!
So that'll be interesting, I think, when that comes out. And I was hoping that Jeremiah would hop on.
Well, remember, several years ago, we spent several Tolkien Society meetings in a row reading straight from the Kalevala on the Tales of Kullervo, and then to Tolkien's rewriting of his own version
Turin.
with Turin Turambar.
Yeah.
And after we were done, our general consensus was Tolkien did a much more interesting job with the story. Kullervo, you don't feel sympathetic for it.
Which makes you wonder, how does he render the Kullervo story himself?
Right, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how he does the official one.
Was the original tale more of a morality?
Well, so yeah, because it was all the song edda, and it was all about teaching kids how not to do bad things. Because he's, killing babies and having incest and all these other things, and just a bad guy, and one thing after another, and
He wasn't a tragic hero, he was kind of an anti-hero almost.
he wasn't even a hero. He was a bad guy.
He was just an answer.
And he's always pity me. Why is the world always picking on me? Whereas Turambar, he actually felt sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that should be in our video archives from way back when.
Yeah, it should be. That was very early on.
So that's youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars. It should be, if it's not there,
2010, I think.
yeah, it could be under Tolkien Moot or /Middle-earth Radio. Anyone, because Google keeps changing how you link things. But
We've been broadcasting since, or we've been recording since about what, 2010?
at least.
For Tolkien Scholars.
Right. Yeah, at least.
Yeah. Because I came on, I think, in 2008 or 9.
Okay.
And then I don't think we were recording every session until a year later. Okay, Tom, carry on. Let us know if you can't hear us. Then we speculated what Christopher Tolkien will publish next if he lives long enough.
Oh, is he 90 now?
He's got to be up there. But he lives in the south of
Amazing.
France, which keeps you, I guess,
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
But my big thing, I'm like, please, Christopher Tolkien, King of the Green Dozen, okay? I want to see this unfinished story that sounds so cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't get any vote there. The fact that Jeremiah mentioned this, he said, well, there is a facsimile edition boxed set of The Hobbit due out soon where everything is exactly as it was in 1938, including the original version of Riddles in the Dark chapter. And I found several many editions of The Hobbit out there in the USA. it seems like the chatter on the internet was that this was supposed to be released in 2014, but then it was delayed until this year. So I'd like to, maybe we could find out sometime more on that, because I'd like to know what the deal is. But it's a boxed set of The Hobbit, and I'm assuming, well, boxed with what? Boxed with Lord of the Rings? I don't think so. With stuff. But the main factor is a facsimile. Now the 75th edition, which I have a copy of, the cover, is the old school cover. But I'm pretty sure that the Riddles of the Dark, it's the current text,
Okay.
not the old one. So this is an actual facsimile, as if they were reprinting the same one in the beginning.
Well, the one that I like that I grew up with, the Bookman first edition.
Oh, that shiny one. That's the 50th.
It was. I had the paperback,
Oh, nice.
but I like the art.
It is, yeah.
The art.
Jeremiah remarked on the news that the extended version of the Battle of the Five Armies has been given an R rating. So we discussed that a little bit.
Is it the violence?
That's what my daughter thinks.
Imagine.
My daughter thinks, yeah. Jeremiah thought, more naked dwarfs? No, please don't.
It's that dwarven
Little too hirsute.
I think what it's going to be is more beheadings.
Okay.
Because that automatically will.
So does the MPAA say 1 beheading's allowed?
Yes.
2 is outright.
Yeah.
Right out.
5 is, yeah. I got
Remember
it.
to 3.
Yes, the holy hand grenade. Anyway, so yes, apparently, in order to keep it consistent, they have a ratings, or they have the formula by which they say, okay, taking all things into consideration, if you have, a beheading is worth PG-13 already.
Wow.
But if you have multiple,
Wow.
and so but that's her guess based on the chatter of ringers, as she likes to consider herself.
On the one
OneRing.net. Yeah.
Which we're in the chat room
Yeah.
as well.
So, but it doesn't come out. I don't think it's not out yet, is it? Extended edition comes out. Yeah. Okay, next. Sorry, these are long notes, but it's good. We got a lot in, Hawk, without you.
Apparently. Yeah.
Sorry. You missed. In fact, it was funny because when I finished with Jeremiah and we got up there, 2 minutes later,
I walked in.
You walked
I
in.
know. I like intuition was perfect.
Exactly. We're like, time to close. We decided to postpone reading a Tolkien letter until the next meeting, and also it's getting late for Jeremiah because it's like 8 hours later there. So our next meeting will be Saturday, September 12th. We will
Which,
be
by the way,
reading.
is Katie's birthday. Yesterday was mine, and today is Katie's.
Oh, I did know that.
Yeah.
Oh, totally missed that.
You managed to survive it.
We kept it very, very,
Okay.
very small. Just,
I brought something back for you, Hawk.
thank you.
Hawk Robinson, this is your life. Your very own copy of the Tolkien Society seminar this summer that I
Oh,
went to
wonderful.
in England. So
And that was in the 2011 ones where they read my
yeah, exactly.
letter.
So and I have to say I was really
Thank you,
enjoying
Dennis.
it. You're very welcome. I really enjoyed it. It was very much more scholarly. It was a seminar, and I thought it would be a shorter time period, and I didn't realize until that morning that it was an all-day event.
Right.
And it was like an hour and a half away, so I had to scramble, and I took Alice out for her birthday because actually it was on July 4th, which is her birthday. So we went to Leeds and enjoyed it very much, so I'm not going to go into all of it, but I will read off the topics, if you don't mind.
Please. Just very briefly, because we're running late on.
So J.R.R. Tolkien in Staffordshire, 1915 to 1918, and this speaker covered the time when Tolkien was a second lieutenant in the war, and he was relieved for a while because of injuries, and so he was recovering, and which was really Edith's chance to, they were newly married right before he left, so this was really time for them as a young married couple. And yeah,
I've been watching the Great War thing, so I've been thinking about, well, where was Tolkien started? Was it in the Western Front?
yeah, he was in Belgium and France. Yeah,
Belgium and France?
I believe so.
Near Ypres?
Battle of the Somme.
Yeah.
Sounds a little bit south.
Yeah, I don't know the actual
I thought he was in the Somme, was the
military
trenches of the Somme.
time, but let me just run through these
Yep.
quickly. So this, but very relevant to what you were talking about, because he talked about basically he spent some time in Staffordshire. Again, that's kind of like the middle of England. And then the second talk was on hatching dragons, their earliest conception and development in Tolkien's writing, which is really good. The third talk was, I think, my favorite, parallel paths and distorting mirrors, strategic duality as a narrative principle in Tolkien's Book of Lost Tales, The Silmarillion, and The Lord of the Rings. And this is by Michaela Hausmann, who was a German PhD student, in which she was fluent in English, and she did a great job, very nice PowerPoint, and she just did some really interesting comparisons of people throughout. So, and I've got photographs of that I do have with me, but I can't show them right now. The next one was Tolkien in East Yorkshire, so a different part of his time when, again, he was in the service. He was actually stationed for part of the time, not in this would be part of the time he was stationed on a base in England, but it was in this area called East Yorkshire near the coast. And actually, this is where he argued that Luthien, the image of Luthien dancing in the
really?
actually comes from there. And he actually found the tree
nice.
that Edith danced at.
Oh, nice.
That glade,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is what, yeah. So, and then the next one was, I think, my least favorite, that Book of the Lost Narrator, Rhetoric and Esotericism in the Silmarillion. So it's more of a deconstructionist one.
Right.
But anyway, some really great talks. And of course, my favorite one wasn't listed on here.
Yeah.
But on the very back page, it says John Garth, quickened to full life by war, a fresh look at why Tolkien fell for fairy. I have to say, John Garth is not only a good author, he is a good speaker.
Oh, nice.
Incredible. And of course, he wrote that book on Tolkien and the Great War.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that's the same one that you have, Richard.
Yeah, I haven't. I think. See, I have that. I have Tolkien the Great War, but I don't know.
I think that's Garth. Which one do you have, Richard?
Yeah, in the last series.
Oh, of the History of Middle Earth.
Yeah, that one was basically.
Oh, the Great War in Middle Earth, not the Great War in Europe.
Oh.
No,
Okay.
I'm not reading about the Great War. There's
Okay.
this.
He's on YouTube.
There's this group in
channel.
Germany who's going through World War I 1 week at a time, concurrent with the day.
Thank you. Okay, now I get it.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Tom had to crack a joke earlier about talking about the rated R rating.
Oh, yes.
There's a decapitation ceiling, not enough headroom.
Nice.
And then he
And
said,
so-
yes, the Somme, as far as where he was, though he was behind the lines on the first day when there were 60,000 British casualties. The most brutal day in the history of the British Army. I am currently taking the course Garth is giving at Mythgard. Nice.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy too. And somewhere I have an autographed bookmark.
Oh,
John
nice.
Garth, so.
Cool.
Okay, and the end of the notes
Yes.
was that the next meeting, if we have time, and I did go back and figure out which letters we had read already. The last one we read was letter 100. So the next one is letter 101. So if we go all the way to 105, 101 to 104 are short letters to Christopher Tolkien. 105 is to Stanley Unwin,
Okay.
who had recently been knighted
Right.
by the king. Anyway, and if we get to letter 105, there's actually references to some of his works, such as the Lay of Autru and Itrun, the essay on fairy stories, which is what we already referred to, and the Notion Club papers, which is published in volume 9 of the History of Middle Earth, Sauron Defeated, which I think you have, Paul.
Yes.
Volume 9. So
Yes.
only if we
Well, I
get
have
that
all
far.
of them. I have the entire history book.
So those are some thoughts there, but we might only get through 104 based on time. But I just wanted to suggest there, if we get that far, we can do.
Yes, okay.
Anyway, I had a thoroughly great time in Britain, and a lot of sunshine. It hardly ever rained there, which is amazing.
Yeah, you really lucked out.
Are you in Britain or England?
Both, because England is part of Britain, as you
Right, but technically, in order to get to Britain, you'd have to go to Wales.
I did go to Wales.
I got you.
Ah. It's the ancient Britain.
Did you see the Prince of Wales? I hear
I did not, but I went to Caernarvon.
I hear he's very loud.
Yes, he's very outspoken.
Okay, so
That's the tale I have to tell you.
thank you so much, Brian,
You're welcome.
for the notes there. Month, anything you care to share? Because I do have something, but I want to give you guys a chance. Anything since the last meeting that you excited about, care to share that's Tolkien related?
Well, other than the Great War.
Right, yeah, good, right.
So do you want to maybe send a link to us so we have?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, please let me link so we can add the notes.
They're archiving their previous episodes and playlists.
Okay.
So I can send that.
If you can send that
It's
to us,
just the
then
Great War.
We'll include it. We'll include that link perhaps.
We'll try and
in the
remember.
notes.
So last month was WorldCon 75, aka Sasquatch.
I went.
Or did you? I was there.
I tried to go.
Oh, okay.
I went because I read that it was $45 for a day, but I didn't notice was it was $45 for Sunday,
Yeah.
for Monday, for the first day.
The first day is
And then
Wednesday.
it was $70 for the rest of
each
the
day.
days,
Oh.
except for the
It's
last.
very expensive. It was $240.
I had to turn around.
I looked at it, but I just thought, no.
So I wasn't going to go, but it was here in Spokane. So WorldCon is a different country every year. There's a whole bidding voting process, kind of like the Olympics, and it seems to have kind of the same drama and corruption issues and all of that that the IOC has had.
And entry fees.
Yes.
And it's expensive. Apparently, it's more than
Hence
Gen
the
Con.
corruption.
Yeah, it's more than Gen Con or Comic Con or the much larger ones. Supposedly. Anyway, this was supposedly the largest WorldCon to date. There were over 4,300 people in attendance is estimated, and over 10,000 memberships for voting and such.
Wow.
I was not going to go. However, two different factions insisted I should go, and one of them did a GoFundMe to pay for me to go. So the two different factions were, one was the gaming division for role-playing gaming and such. And those of you who've been following my stuff for years, you know I'm an avid gamer and I do the research on role-playing games and their benefits and how to use them for therapy and education. One fellow, that's the fellow who did the fundraiser. Another, it turns out one of the board of directors or some director level, the next door neighbor, Katie here in Spokane, her house in Spokane, turned out to be part of the WorldCon Sasquatch staff, and so she started to ask for me to go to their Super Science Saturday. So the WorldCon is the annual science fiction convention. It's where they give out the Hugo Awards for science fiction writing.
Got it this year.
It's complicated. There isn't just one. They have many different categories.
I'm not familiar with that often.
And there was a lot of politics this year. There's a whole thing called the sad puppies and the rabbit puppies. And my understanding of it, because I try to stay out of this in some ways, but basically there's been a push on one side to give more awards and to more diversified authors. So instead of old white males getting all the awards, going out of their way to make sure that female authors, ethnic minority groups, etc., get recognized with awards rather than just old white guys. So if you pay a minimum membership, you get to vote on who you want to get the Hugo Award. So they started to organize, and I guess this is nothing new as far as organizing slates. So they say only vote for these people, and they try to skew the results, etc. That's my basic
So
understanding.
basically, it's affirmative action.
And well, so what happens? The puppies though are anti-affirmative action. They're like, no, we want to push back against this, etc. And then there's the rabbit puppies, which would be like super extreme version. And there's all sorts of drama and politics, and I didn't like to do that whole stuff.
Wow.
So what I didn't even know about that until my neighbors started telling me a little bit. But anyway, they wanted me to be there to speak on some panels, to present my research, to do this big poster thing. And so since they were paying for me, and I could do, and it's for rpgresearch.com, all my research there, 10 years now, 10 years of research. So I put an 8-foot by 4-foot poster together, and it was probably one pitch. I put together folders of my research that fills a milk crate full of stuff. So, because I could have felt like, well, I haven't got much done because I'm doing it part-time. Well, actually, I have a fair amount of research. It's about that tall when you print it all out on the effects of role-playing games and the potential use for therapy and education. So I had to speak on 3 panels, one each day, the first 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday was basically a moderator myself, so it was more of a presentation than a panel. But the room was quite full, so that was nice, because since it was so early in the convention didn't start till 3 on Wednesday. This was at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. I thought it'd be an empty room. And the room before was practically empty, the one after was empty. Luckily, it was pretty full, so that went well. Other than the thing holding my poster kept sliding down, and so an audience member came up, a nice old fellow came up and held it for me. He was very kind. Just hold the post in place, holding the poster up. I got a laugh from people. I'm tying part of this into what you were talking about here, because they had many panels from writers, and that include like the worlds. Let's see, like this one really struck me as a similar theme: sub-creation and forms of life. They had almost identical themes they had over 1,400 events during that 5 days, 45-minute segments.
Yeah, they claimed that the entry fees were based on the number of events.
I don't.
Is the explanation that was given to me?
Well, that is, anyway, I don't know. It is what I have.
There's a lot to say.
I don't know. It irritates me.
Yeah, it was very expensive.
I couldn't go to the World's Fair of science fiction because it was overpriced.
Right. Well, you're not alone. So in the gaming section, they needed game masters to run tables. Well, even if you're working there as a volunteer or working there, you still have to buy a ticket. Now, you might be able to get a reduced ticket if you do enough hours, but that reduced ticket is still like $100 and something.
Right.
Here in Spokane, so we had a lot of who wanted to run games who couldn't.
Was there any DMs there at all?
Yeah, we worked out. So anyway, I don't want to veer too much off from the Tolkien. That's why I was bringing the sub-creation part of it. So these were all science fiction writers. Now, some of them were kind of Tolkien bashing. Some of them were like, we're sick of Tolkien-style fantasy. We want unique, different stuff, modern. So it was kind of interesting. Now, I was working, so I didn't get to go to anything at all. I ran some games. I was on some panels. I did my science thing. And I did my gender bias research surveys.
Yeah.
So I was busy the whole time. And I got sick. And I'm still fighting.
What was their definition of modern?
Of what?
Well, for some people,
Updated.
modern means that we take all the biblical values and chuck them in the trash bin.
I didn't attend any panels, so I couldn't tell you. That's what they had.
I'm just curious.
I would assume that it's partly a pushback against the heroic culture thing, and partly just we want to reinvent it. We want to do something that's very new and very
they're always trying to try something new. So anyway, it was interesting just tying that all into Tolkien. Meanwhile, we had all the fires going on, and they literally like started sealing the doors, putting up big notices saying dangerous smoke and everything on Thursday.
The sun was turned orange.
Yeah, there are lots of photos of like, we're in Mordor and stuff like that. It ended up becoming Smokan instead of Spokane, is what everybody called it.
nice.
And so,
Yeah, too bad, really, because I don't want.
and
Hopefully,
Smokon.
it'll be their last year enduring impression of Spokane. But
So the bid for next year is Helsinki, I think next year, I forget. I think the following year. Anyway, the big bid announcement was Helsinki, Finland. I think they go like 2 years ahead or something, but, because I think there's one before that, but maybe it's 2016, so I'll still keep Finland. And I'm, half Finnish, but I'm not going. And it was interesting, it was actually pretty well run, which worked against my research, because part of my research was people in line to fill out questionnaires, and there were almost no lines at all. And they were
on the way to places.
No, I couldn't. They were too busy. I had to catch people that were sitting for like 2 sessions down or something.
Right.
And so even though there were 4,300 people, I only had 125 questionnaires. Whereas at SPOCON, which had between 200 to 700 people, depending on what you listen to, or between 400 and 700, I got 164 respondents.
Huh. Interesting.
And 3 days versus 5 days. So,
I heard that SpellCon is in October this year.
No, they did SPOCON inside of WorldCon.
Oh.
I haven't heard anything about that. Maybe you know something I don't know, but
Or
my understanding is they're just going to do a normal one
one.
next. Yeah, they had the room next door to gaming was SPOCON. So anyway, so that's what I did for that, and then I've been sick ever since, and I haven't been able to update stuff. I've hit my inhaler and stuff, so I'm not hacking and coughing. I'm on much meds, but that's where. So that's my main contribution. It's sci-fi related. Tolkien was mentioned. And,
It's a good year for sci-fi. We've got Star Wars episodes.
Yeah, I was looking forward to the Han Solo one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Okay.
get my Star Wars kit on, and stand in line. I think we'll probably be camping on the sidewalk the night before.
Let's see if anybody is saying in the chat room. It doesn't looks like the wondering.net. They're just doing their random chatting. It doesn't look like they are tuned in, even though I've been posting. Okay.
You want to do an Elvish word or not this time?
Oh yeah, Elvish word of the day of the month. Yeah. So this is something else we do each month. Is we go to our. Oh man, getting up and down constantly here.
Are you okay? One of us can read it if you need.
When we get to, we're heading there. So Vineyard Tengwar, I have the collected works, all of them up till a few years ago. And on the first page of the first issue, number 1, September 1988, is a drawing of a hominid and the different body parts. And so we've been slowly going down the list here. So what did we cover last time? Was it hand and such?
I'd have to see it.
Okay, it wasn't in the notes, huh?
Well, just go through them. So we were hand.
So we had Dol for head, Loxa for hair,
We did hand.
Finda for tress,
I think we're down to
Anta for face, Hen for eye.
I think we're at chest now. We're done with
Okay, so we're down to chest. So we had Roma for shoulder.
Yep, got that.
We didn't do arm or muscle or sinew, elbow or fist. I don't think so.
Okay.
Ranko or Ra. Ranko, and then there's a comma, and then Ra with a looks like upside down V. I forget what we call that mark.
Circumflex.
And then so that's Ranko. That's for arm. That's the upper arm. Then the muscle of it, or the sinew, is tuo, Tuo.
I wonder if Tuor is named.
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder. And then oleme is elbow. Oleme with the 2 dots over it, over the second E. And then quare, Q-U, accented A, R, and then the E with 2 dots over that. That's fist.
Okay.
And then he also differentiates between left hand and right hand.
Ooh, I'd like to know that.
The right hand is formaite, Formaite, no marks. That's right hand. And the left hand is hyarmite, because he uses, so Hyarmaite, that's left hand.
M-E-I-T-E?
Maite.
Okay. Okay, so this is also related to north, south, east, and west.
Yes.
So
Yes.
So this goes back to the orientation of the compass,
Yes.
where north is to the right, is that correct, or left?
North is forward, isn't it? No. Oh, east. Oh, really? I know. Okay.
So,
Oh, isn't there compass?
Formenos is to the north,
Okay.
right?
All right.
So then, if your right hand is, if the word for north on the map is, let's see, and Hyar is to the south, I believe. So that would mean that on the map, then,
And you would be facing west,
well,
towards the Undying Lands.
that would make sense. If you were doing it, yes, if you were standing on the ground, your right hand was facing towards the north, and your left hand was facing towards the south. That's correct. Yeah.
So say that a little louder. I think that might be a little hard to hear.
Richard said.
I was just saying that he was saying that basically the right hand was
Same word for the north.
word for the north, and the left hand was for the south, so that if you're standing that way, you're facing west towards the Undying Lands.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah,
Worth looking into.
that would be. That's something. Put that in the notes that we should research that for discussion. Please. All right. I think the next thing was just to do our letters, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for the report, Hawk.
You bet.
Richard, did you want to read one of the letters?
So we start with 100.
You can pull one up, or if you got there.
Can I mumble?
No, you need to speak. You need to project your voice loudly and enunciate clearly.
Are we starting with 101?
Because
Okay.
100 was a long, rambling one,
Okay.
and I did look over that song, so.
Okay.
100, actually, it's, well, 101, from a letter to Christopher Tolkien, the 3rd of June, 1945. There is a stand-down parade of the civil defense in the parks in the afternoon, to which I shall have to drag myself. But I'm afraid it all seems rather a mockery to me, for the war is not over. And the one that is, or is part of it, has largely been lost. But it is of course wrong to fall into such a mood, for wars are always lost, and the war always goes on, and there is no good growing faint. It is not good, getting tripped up on English again. And it is no good growing faint. That's the end.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, by the way, Tom said, yes, you will be facing the sunset. I wonder if that is connected to Valinor being in the west. So this would be a nice topic to research for us to then discuss what is found in next month's meeting. So definitely.
I nominate Richard to research it.
No. Everybody research. Everybody finding different
I'm not
tidbits.
even
of it.
sure.
We're expecting a baby in 2 weeks.
Oh.
We'll be researching.
All right.
How to
All right.
research it.
Tom, you can help us research that. Any other viewers, please do.
Is there anybody else? Did Jeremiah join us or not? Oh,
Okay,
okay.
Brian, you want to read the next one?
Sure.
Do you mind,
Before I read the,
He's
no, I've
fine.
got one. Before I read the next one, it's interesting that he just says in June 1945, he says, the war is not over, and the one that is, or the part of it, has largely been lost. And what he's referring to, okay, remember the context is that VE Day, Victory in Europe, in other words, the surrender of Germany, happened a month earlier in May of 1945. So he says there's a parade, but I think it's a mockery because he says the war is not over because Japan is still active, and there's actors in this whole conflict like Russia that he's a little concerned about. But it's kind of interesting that he's a bit pessimistic. He says the one that is over, or the part of it, has largely been lost. But of course, wrong to follow wars, and the war always goes on, and there's no good growing faint. So I think what he's getting at there is, look, Hitler's been defeated, but look at the fact that even though we're glad that it's over, what have we lost? Even when you win in a war, you lose.
Yeah.
That was his point of view, is that it was necessary, but you lose. Look at all the people that died. So Europe, because it's not over there, it's here. I mean, for him, this is home.
Right.
Look what happened to London. Look what happened to all sorts of historical places like cathedrals that were bombed.
Right.
Just
All the
before
destruction.
Yeah.
just before World War One, because I'm going through that channel, there was a big disillusionment, and I think that's the root of what he's talking about there. Because just before that, the attitude was, before World War One started, it was going to be a short, glorious
The end of
war.
imperialism too.
Right.
And and nobody had paid attention to the Civil War, which they should have been doing in America, to understand the changes that were going on. And it was just so horrible. And
And technology made killing so much more efficient.
he was it just so imprinted him that, the attitude of winning glory and honor in war is just.
Oh yeah, you can tell in his letters to his son in World War II how cynical he is. Well, even in World War One, how cynical he is about the incompetence of the leadership and such, and just he doesn't mince words as far as his opinion.
The invasion of Gallipoli, the Dardanelles.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing was Winston Churchill, Admiralty of the Navy, wanted in on the war, basically.
Yeah, and they lost a lot. Okay, here's letter 102 from a letter to Christopher Tolkien, 9th of August, 1945. The news today about atomic bombs is so horrifying, one is stunned. The utter folly of these lunatic physicists is to consent to do such work for war purposes, calmly plotting the destruction of the world. Such explosives in men's hands, while their moral and intellectual status is declining, is about as useful as giving out firearms to all inmates of a jail and then saying that you hope this will ensure peace. But one good thing may arise out of it, I suppose, if the write-ups are not overheated. Japan ought to cave in. Well, we're in God's hands, but he does not look kindly on Babel builders. Ouch. As in the Tower of Babel.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So any comments on this? Obviously referring to Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Just think about the world, how much the world changed pre-first atomic bomb and post. How dramatically that changes your view of the world and war, and Einstein's quote of, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. He's talking about their moral, intellectual status is declining. Well, I mean, the scientists, of course, they felt horrified, some of them anyway, about how much this was. And, one guy gave his life because of his exposure to plutonium, but still trying to finish the project and died from it. And I disagree with the intellectual status, and they wrestled with the morality of it hugely, of course. And I don't want to go too far down that road. But yeah, it really, he says Japan ought to cave in. So clearly this has just happened, and they had not yet, the emperor had not surrendered officially and such.
So I guess that would be the Hiroshima bomb before the Nagasaki bomb.
I'm not sure.
We'd have to look up the date on the timing here.
There were 3 days apart.
But boy, that is a nice little snapshot of history right there. His direct commentary.
Well, and look at it from our perspective. When things happen that are contemporary with us, I mean, if we found out that North Korea, dropped a bomb in South Korea, how would we respond?
Which they definitely happened.
And so,
or Iran and Israel.
I think in later time he may have been able to reflect and find out, but you don't know. You don't know that struggle of those people at the time. You just know, you're just stunned. And I think it's good to be careful not to just try to judge people in a quick and flippant way. But it is no small thing. I mean, I understand his horror because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of lives snuffed out. Yeah.
He's also thinks that the Blitz of London happening in one instant.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hitler had beaten us to it.
Yeah. I mean, the Blitz was essentially, I think they say, was it 100 days? Every night there was bombing for like 100 days.
Tom posted the bombs were August 6th and 9th. So this would have been after the second bomb. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Thanks for that, Tom.
I think I've talked to people who were in the war, and they'll almost always say, yes, it was horrible, but they
what would have been the meat grinder if we had to go over
they
there
would
and
have
cleared out city street by city street?
Yes, the general consensus was Japan would resist to the last person. They had taught civilians, you don't surrender.
Even now in their culture, it is humiliation to have surrendered. They would rather die than humiliate.
Okinawa is basically a test case.
Yeah.
So,
but I think the thing is that I feel like the question that is being raised here that I think is worthwhile considering is, even if we say, perhaps this will prevent endless bloodshed, so to speak. If we had a secret weapon that would stop ISIS in its tracks, but it would kill, say, 100,000 innocent people, would we use it if we thought, well, this would stop ISIS from extending out this bloodshed and genocide and whatever?
But see, that you get into the difference between classical warfare and the way that's being fought now.
Well, I think if you have that kind of a situation, you will always be able to find somebody in the organization who's willing to.
But the biggest thing is that they didn't really bomb military targets either. They did bomb, even though they had some military industrial
there
stuff.
was some,
but yeah, those were very much civilian targets too. So
yeah, I to cripple them, I mean, essentially they would bring them to their knees.
So it was much more for the psychological.
And I think that's what I struggle with, is I just look at it and I say, of course, with trying to understand people's motivations.
And there's a lot of anime still coming out from people from that time period trying to express what they. So Brendan, of course, is watching a lot of anime because it was learning Japanese in his time in Japan and all that. And we watched one, I think it was last year, but they're showing before the bomb the fire ring, the incendiary bombs that would be dropped to burn
Tokyo.
Because this was one of the smaller ones, but this was, I think it was either Nagasaki or Hiroshima, but because of the villages were made out of wood. And so they were always having to put out the fires and all of that. And then at one point, the bomb goes off. And of course, if you read Hiroshima, the short book with all those testimonies.
By John, what's his name?
Yeah, I've got it somewhere.
That's fine, don't worry about it. I do think, though, that at his time period, you need to understand where he's coming from. If he thinks a tree is it's sad to see a tree being cut down, he's looking at many people being cut down. And I think perhaps we need to recognize, too, that governments sometimes overreach themselves, because we have to be careful to assume that if we do X, this will prevent Y. I mean, the question about Iraq and all sorts of things, you just have to be really careful, because you don't know that you will be able to prevent things.
And as Tom correctly points out, everybody bombed civilians in World War II. The fire bombings of Dresden and Tokyo were about as bad in terms of number killed. Sure. It just wasn't as dramatically huge, just the visual was just.
Well, I guess the difference is with the fire bombings, you have a chance to get out. With the nuke, it's just.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You want to read letter 103, Hawk?
Yes. 103 from a letter to Christopher Tolkien, 11th October 1945. Following his election to the Merton Professorship of English Language and Literature, Tolkien left Pembroke College and became a professional fellow of Merton College. This letter describes his first impressions of Merton. I was duly admitted yesterday at 10 a.m. and then had to endure the most formidable college meeting I have ever seen. Went on till 1:30 p.m. without cessation and then broke up in disorder. The warden talked almost unceasingly. I lunched in Merton and made a few arrangements, putting my name down at the estate's bursary on the housing list. There's a footnote for that, number one. and getting a master key to all gates and doors. It is incredible belonging to a real college and a very large and wealthy one. I am looking forward to showing you round. I walked round this afternoon with Dyson, footnote 2, conducted yesterday, and is now ensconced in the rooms I hoped for, looking out over the meadows, exclamation mark. So he's happy to see both those. I am going to the Inklings tonight. We shall think of you. Big exclamation mark by looking over the meadows. All right, and the footnotes for 103.
Dyson was one of his friends.
Relating to the 100-year-old tree, or 150-year-old tree, when we were discussing that, I was remembering that C.S. Lewis brought, in his Narnia series, from the first time that they went back, they brought back a tree seedling, the wardrobe that they traveled through at the beginning of the series.
Yeah,
Is actually from a tree, built from a tree from Narnia.
that's right. Which is why sometimes, I think it says this at the end of The Magician's Nephew, that after they planted the tree and it grew up, it sometimes would, the leaves would sway in the wind, even though there was no breeze, because they figured then there must be a wind in Narnia.
But then the tree died and they made it no work.
That's right.
So footnote number 1, estates bursary on the housing list. Tolkien wanted to rent a college house because 20 Northmore Row was proving too large for his family's present needs. Footnote number 2 regarding Dyson. Hugo Dyson was elected a Fellow of Merton and was admitted to the college at the same time as Tolkien.
What was his first name?
Hugo Dyson.
Not to be confused with the guy that's physicist.
Yes.
I was wondering.
And Tom has comments.
Yeah, me too.
Back in letter 100, Tolkien had just been decrying the warplane as the real villain.
Yes.
Now, 2 months later, comes an even deadlier weapon delivered by airplane. Indeed.
Yes.
Well, that's part of his fear is the escalation
Sure.
of the killing ability, and in his mind, the intellectual and moral decline inversely.
When you are carrying a gun with a bayonet and you realize
Yeah,
that you think a lot more about it, whereas if you've got a button, essentially.
right. It's not dehumanizing as much. You have to see the person killed.
It's visceral.
Yeah.
And there was also a lot of demonizing.
Well, this is true.
I mean, that's why the Japanese civilian population in Okinawa committed mass suicide. It was because the Americans were demonized.
Of course, they assumed that they would do the worst thing, which is why not Eisenhower, but
Wilson? No, not Wilson.
no, he became governor of Japan after the war. MacArthur.
Yeah.
He did a great deal of good for the And okay, so thank you, Hawk. Richard, did you want to do the next one? Unless you had more comments on 103.
And yeah, Tom verified MacArthur. Yeah. Did you want to read 104? Okay. Unless Tom, you want to read. you can read out loud if you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Where are we?
104.
You want to do 105 then?
Okay. 22 October 1945. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I dined for the first time at Merton High Table on Thursday and found it very agreeable, though odd. For fuel economy, the common room is not heated, and the dons meet and chat amiably on the dais until someone thinks there are enough there for grace to be said. After that, they sit and dine and have their port and coffee, and smoke and evening newspapers, all at high table in a manner that, if agreeably informal, is rather shocking to one trained in the severer ceremonies and strict precedents of medieval Pembroke. At about 8:45, Dyson and I strolled through our grounds to Magdalen and visited Warney and Havard. Jack was away. We broke up about 10:30.
So kind of meeting notes.
Mm-hmm.
In a way.
It kind of shows us the inner workings of the college.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to get ourselves into it because it was really all these colleges were part of the university. You know, whereas in America, most colleges universities, it's less of an understanding of that.
The separation of.
I mean, Oxford is beautiful. I mean, I just there this summer and all these old buildings, but really, there's lots of signs saying unless you belong to the college, no admittance.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I'm interdisciplinary degree at Eastern, and I go from the recreation therapy side, which is over in the phys ed college, to the psych department over in the middle of the campus, which is of course in the psych college, to the music department on the south end of the campus, because the music therapy side, which is the whole music college. So that would be more problematic in a more classical setting.
Right.
Again, thank you for that, Tom. Any comments you'd like to make?
I visited University College once, and I made the mistake of walking across the quad over the grass.
Oh.
There was no signs, of course, saying you couldn't do that. Someone politely informed me afterwards that only the fellows were allowed to walk on the grass.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's the same at all colleges, but of course, in America, someone would have run out and said, "Stop that!" They just waited until I'd broken the rules and then very nicely told me it was,
Right.
Don't do that again.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, Brian nodded his head that, yeah, that's true in other places as well there. So interesting. I
I
did
don't
not
remember
know
that at Eastern.
No, I wouldn't have. No, yeah, that's.
And a fellow is not a student, correct? A fellow is.
A fellow's like a
elected.
professor. Well,
Right.
professor.
Right. It's a subculture.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about that. I mean, that's in my wishful thinking. I love that. But that's not the direction my life went to.
Yeah. Brian is a teacher, elementary school teacher.
Another faux pas I made was I was at breakfast and and I reached out to take a cup of coffee, and the person who was serving it took it back because it was their job to pour the coffee and hand it to me.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like treading on their prerogative.
It's like Oregon, you're not allowed to fill your own gas pump, gas tank.
Yes. I used to live in California, and whenever I would drive into Oregon and stop at a gas station and get out of the car, guys would come running out to stop me because they'd see the California plates and think I was going to pump my own gas.
Well, yeah, my first time there, from when I moved to Washington here, I didn't know about that with Oregon. And when I lived in California, I never went up to Oregon. And yeah, that I got accosted very quickly about that. So now I just, because usually I never go to Oregon. It's passing through. Oh, I take it back. I did it on my motorcycle, do a motorcycle trip along the coast there.
Well, I came from Oregon and moved up to here.
Oh, did you? Okay. Well, I refuse to get gas there.
I once spent 15 minutes in my car waiting for people to come into one day.
Oh, wow. I like the old days of full service and such.
Yeah.
But that's a choice.
Well,
And I don't like the lack of, so I literally, if I'm going to Idaho through there, which is a long drive, I always gas up right north of the border on the Washington side, and drive straight through to the Idaho side, gas up there, and drive straight through back the other way.
Yeah, Tom, can I ask what part of the UK were you in when that happened with the coffee?
Oh, that was at Oxford.
Yes, I know, but we're in the south or the north is what I'm asking.
I was at University College in Oxford when that happened.
That was in Oxford. Okay.
Yes.
University College in Oxford.
Yeah. I think it depends too on class. Not that, I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be over there. I think working class, that would not be a big deal at all. But I think middle class, I think it is seen as when you're over at somebody's place, it is they look forward. They look forward to actually serving you.
Yeah.
It'd be like you go over to somebody's house for dinner. They ask you for dinner, and then you go in the kitchen and say, "Now, how can I help?" Well, you could, but I'd rather, I invited you over. I want to cook the meal for you, and so it's I look forward to. It's the pleasure is in the
Pleasure to serve.
Pleasure to
Are
serve.
you being served?
It's kind
Yes,
of, I think it's a kind of contrast between America's self-determination
Yeah.
and a culture of privilege.
It is partly. It is partly. I think it's a very interesting situation because,
Full illustration of the caste system.
and I think both show something good. Our culture, we would be like, hey, I'm not going to just necessarily depend on somebody else to do it for me. At least in the old kind of school way is to say, I'm going to go and I'm not going to presume. I'm just going to go and take care of what I need to get. But over there, it's true. It is definitely a little different. So that's funny.
Thank you for sharing that, Tom. That was interesting. That was useful. Okay, we want to rotate through 105.
Yeah, we have a half an hour left. We can do
Great.
that.
Perfect.
We could do it at the page break on here, which is
Well, so it's usually I've been doing it. They're good-sized paragraphs.
4 paragraphs is about half a page, and then the last 2 paragraphs.
You want to do?
So are they good-sized paragraphs?
They're variable, of course.
You want to just like do 2 paragraphs and then we'll swap it around? Maybe?
Yeah.
How about if I do the first 3?
Okay.
Be
Sir-
loud.
To Sir Stanley Unwin, who had been knighted, wrote to inquire about the progress of the Lord of the Rings, something dear and near to our hearts here.
Exactly.
21st July 1946, 20 Northmore Road, Oxford. I have treated you very badly. I think you would be disposed to forgive me if you knew the true tale of my troubles, domestic and academic, but I will spare you that and attempt to do better. I have been ill, worry and overwork mainly, but I am a good deal recovered and am at last able to take some steps to see that at least the year work so that as far as it is academic is alleviated. For the first time in 25 years, except the year I went on crutches just before The Hobbit came out, I think, I am free of examining, though I am still battling with a mountain of neglects, out of which I have just dug a good many letters from George Allen and Unwin, and with a lot of brothers this time of chaos and reconstruction. I hope after this week actually to write. For one thing, I shall not be left all alone to try and run our English school. I have ceased to be professor of Anglo-Saxon. I have removed to Merton as the Merton Professor of English Language and Literature. Professor Wen from King's College, London, is coming in October to take the Anglo-Saxon off my shoulders. And we were about to elect another Merton Professor of Modern Literature. It ought to be C.S. Lewis or perhaps Lord David Cecil, but one never knows. Something in the last letter I was wondering about was when the surrender of Japan was and the end of the war, because he kind of was implying rationing.
It was the next day, I believe. It was within like a day of the second bomb.
Okay, so I'm handing it off to whoever wants.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.
What was the last part you said?
C.S. Lewis or perhaps Lord
Oh,
David
right.
Cecil.
Do we, with a long letter like this, Hawk, should we discuss it as we go or at the end? Should we just read through it?
I think we should read through it as we usually do, and then we just make,
All right.
make notes to your notes to discuss it.
Okay, but I did not begin this letter primarily to talk about myself. I wanted to say first how sorry I am that I did not, as I intended, write as soon as ever I heard, to congratulate you on your own honor, which gave me very great pleasure. Also, I very much want news of Raynor. I hope earnestly that it is still hesitant to ask news of sons. But my Christopher, who transferred to the Fleet Air Arm and is still technically in the Navy, has gone back this term to Trinity, and I wondered if there is any chance of Raynor returning soon. I should very much like to see him again. I do not know whether David Severn still wants to look at Farmer Giles. In case he does, I am sending it now, after more than a year's delay. If I could have a little leisure, I could add a few things of the same sort, still not finished. But Nigel has never bred anything that consorts with himself at all.
I do not know whether any more information about so literally, quote, promising, unquote, and not performing an author will interest you at all. But I made a very great effort to finish the Hobbit sequel, and chapters went out to Africa and back to my chief critic and collaborator, Christopher, who was doing the maps. But I failed. Troubles and ill health became too thick. I shall now have to study my own work in order to get back to it. But I really do hope to have it done before the autumn, right here, 1940. And at any rate, before the end of the year.
When did he finish?
Though I wonder if you will find any paper, even supposing that the work commends itself. I have, by the way, published a story in verse, footnote, in the Welsh Review of December 1945. I'm about to publish a much expanded version of an essay on fairy stories, originally delivered as a lecture at St. Andrews in a memorial volume to the late Charles Williams. And I have, in a fortnight of comparative leisure round about last Christmas, written 3 parts of another book, footnote number 2, taking up an entirely different frame and setting what little had any value in the inchoate Lost Road, which I had once the impudence to show you. I hope it is forgotten. And other things beside. I hope to finish this in a rush, but my health gave way after Christmas. Rather silly to mention it till it is finished. But I am putting The Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit sequel, before all else, save duties that I cannot wriggle out of. My very best wishes, yours sincerely, J.R.R. Tolkien. That had a lot of meat. Let's see. So let's see. When did The Lord of the Rings get published? About
1950.
54? Okay.
54.
Yeah, so this is 1946.
You know, I
I
felt greatly encouraged by this
Yes.
because I thought how many times I've had irons in the fire and projects that I haven't gotten that done yet, and it's going to take me years before I'm done. I thought, well, you know,
Yeah.
I'm not alone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
normal.
Well, I've mentioned that I'm writing a book, and
Yeah.
I actually hit a milestone a couple of weeks ago. I got to 11,000 words.
That's
So
great.
I've got
Wonderful.
20% done.
Good job.
Great. Well, what is this? So he said he published a story in verse in Welsh Review 1945, so footnote number 1.
That is the ballad of Itru, Outru, and Itrun. I think that's what it'll say.
The lay, yeah, of Atru and Atruin, yes.
And this is beautiful. Can I read like 1 or 2?
Please. Please.
It's too long to read
Loudly.
it full. I will do.
Yes.
Tom, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Lately, I've really been enjoying just reading poetry out loud. Chesterton has a really nice piece called The Ballad of the White Horse, which is about King Alfred the Great, and just love this. But Tolkien is well versed in poetry. Okay.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, thank you. The lay of Outru and Itrun, if I'm saying that correctly. In Britain's land beyond the seas, the wind blows ever through the trees. In Britain's land beyond the waves are stony shores and stony caves. There stands a ruined toft now green, where lords and ladies once were seen, where towers were piled above the trees, and watchmen scanned the sailing seas. Of old a lord in arched hall, with standing stones, yet grey and tall, there dwelt, till dark his doom befell, as still the Britain harpers tell. No child he had his house to cheer, to fill his courts with laughter clear, though wife he wooed and wed with ring, who loved to board and bed did bring. His pride was empty, vain his hoard, without an heir to land and sword. Thus pondering, oft at night awake, his darkened mind would visions make of lonely age and death, his tomb unkept, while strangers in his room, with others' names and others' shields, were masters of his halls and fields. Thus counsel cold he took at last, his hope from light to darkness passed. A witch there was, who webs could weave to snare the heart and wits to reave, who span dark spells with spider craft, and as she span she softly laughed. A drink she brewed of strength and dread, to bind the quick and stir the dead. In a cave she housed where winging bats their harvest sought, and owls and cats from hunting came with mournful cries, night stalking near with needle eyes. In the homeless hills was a hollow dale, black was its bowl, its brink was pale. There silent on a seat of stone, before her cave she sat alone. Dark was her door, and few there came, whether man or beast that man doth tame. In Britain's land beyond the waves are stony hills and stony caves. The wind blows ever over hills, and hollow caves with wailing fills. That's the first part.
Nice. Now, what is that in?
That is,
How can
it's
people get a
called,
hold of it?
1945, The Lay of Autru and Itrun, and that's on last month's notes. The link.
Right, but how can one read, what was it published in?
It's published on a website.
Oh, so it's web available.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We definitely have or that's in last month's, linked to last month's.
Yeah, it is,
Okay.
and I'm just checking to see what the domain is.
Okay.
It's hosted on interesting. A Russian, looks like a Russian domain, or it could be Ukrainian.
What's
Are
the,
you sure that's a
what's the,
legal posting?
what's the dot?
Let's just say my copy of Letters of Tolkien is also from a Russian source.
Yeah, anyway,
Is it dot?
Tom, what did you think of both the letter and the reading there?
Yes. You may.
Tom, did you have any thoughts? How about yourself, Richard?
Sorry.
I hope it's legal. I'll just make it clear. I do not know otherwise.
Is it written in Cyrillic?
Cyrillic.
The Tolkien Estates lawyers will be right over.
I know nothing. Okay, so the first, moving on. So the first work that is mentioned here is the letter, or sorry, the lay
Right.
of Autru.
Right.
So
And then a much expanded version of fairy stories.
yes.
And that's what you were just showing a little bit ago, right?
Yeah, so that's actually interesting because he's referring to it,
Yeah.
publishing
nice
it as a book. So
nice timing.
yeah. So it was actually taken from talks he had done at St. Andrews, which is in Scotland, and it was on the Andrew Lang fairy stories.
Okay.
And Andrew Lang, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but in the early 1900s, like circa 1910, 1920, Andrew Lang edited and brought together and found various fairy stories from various countries in Europe, and they were put together and published as each book or volume was a different color. So there was the green fairy book, the red fairy book, the blue one, and each one had different stories in it.
Huh.
So that became the first half of the 20th century kind of standard reading fare when you'd be reading fairy tales, at least English fairy tales, or European ones.
By the way, question about Japan's surrender from earlier. So the emperor announced it on August 15th, and then formally signed it September 2nd, 1945. So just because that came up a little earlier. And then the second, so the first footnote was that reading. The second footnote is he was talking about, and I having a fortnight of comparative leisure round about last Christmas, written 3 parts of another book. And that was his C biography, pages 171 and 172. So,
okay, and the Notion Club papers
yes, please.
are actually a second attempt of Tolkien's to use material that was generated from a dare that that C.S. Lewis and Tolkien had given each other, in which Lewis dared Tolkien to write a time travel science fiction piece.
Lost Road.
Yes, nice. And Tolkien dared Lewis then to write a space travel type of science fiction novel.
Which manifested as?
That became the Out of the Silent Planet.
Oh, you love that series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So then Lewis, basically in his true Lewis fashion, whipped this out, and Tolkien was, dismayed. Good word. And then of course, Tolkien takes a couple years to try to write it, and it never quite gets it the way he wants. And then later
It's just your book.
he tries to. That's okay. And then later on, he then tries with the Notion Club papers, but a different kind of direction. But I think what he does end up using of that material is it forms the kind of some good material for the Silmarillion, because I'm just going off memory from the Lost Road, but I believe there's reference to characters that end up in the Silmarillion, which of course he started so long back before that.
Well, his whole Fall of Numenor.
Yes, exactly. So the Fall of Numenor was based on, we always think of the World War I, and he's in the trenches and he gets these ideas where he's like on a hospital bed. So those would be like the seed
And
form of the story.
so that's all part one. Part two is Valinor and Middle-earth before Lord of the Rings. And it has the Annals of Valinor, the Annals of Beleriand, the Anu Lindale, which is the Song of Creation, which I've been slowly working on a symphony of, the Lamas, and the Quenta Silmarillion.
Yep.
And
Let's see that it
technically, if he's on a hospital bed, he's not in the trenches.
I meant two different times there.
Sorry.
Yes. But I think if I recall rightly, there's a piece in the Lost Road that refers to a father and son. You want to refer to that there?
Sure. Here's the opening chapters of the Lost Road. Chapter 1, A Step Forward, Young Alboin. Alboin! Alboin! There was no answer. There was none. Esmond Errol stood at the door and called into a small high garden at the back of his house. At length, a young voice answered, sounding distant and like the answer of someone asleep or just awakened. Yes? Where are you? Here. Where's here? Here, up on the wall, father. Oswald sprang down the steps from the door into the garden and walked along the flower-bordered path. It led after a turn to a low stone wall screened from the house by a hedge. Beyond the stone wall, there was a brief space of turf, and then a cliff edge, beyond which outstretched, and now shimmering in a calm evening, the western sea. Upon the wall, Osmond found his son, a boy about 12 years old, lying gazing out to sea with his chin in his hands. So there you are, he said. You take a deal of calling, didn't you hear me? Not before the time when I answered, said Alboin. Well, you must be deaf or dreaming, said his father. Dreaming, it looks like. It is getting very near bedtime, so if you want any story tonight, we shall have to begin at once. I am sorry, father, but I was thinking. What about? Oh, lots of things mixed up. The sea and the world and Albion. Albion? Yes. I wondered why Albion. Why am I called Alboin? They often ask me why Alboin at school, and they call me Albone. But I am not, am I? You look rather bony, boy, but you're not all bone, I'm glad to say. I am afraid I called you Alboin, and that is why you are called it. I am sorry, I never meant it to be a nuisance to you. But it is a real name, isn't it? Said Alboin eagerly. I mean, it means something. And men have been called it. It isn't just invented? Of course not. It is just as real and just as good as Oswin, and it belongs to the same family, you might say. But no one ever bothered me about Oswin, though I often used to get called Oswald by mistake. I remember how it used to annoy me, though I can't think why. I was rather particular about my name. I'm going to kind of skim because he's talking about that.
That's fine.
Key.
I found the Notion Club papers too.
Okay, great. Because there's the key scene.
Right.
I ripped it off like Elbow, and I can't remember why we're reading this.
So yeah, even in here, he's telling the whole story of the Lord of the West and the coming of the eagles, etc. The elf friend. So this is a kind of a telling of the story of Numenor to a modern day, child. He falls asleep dreaming about it, and the Lord of the West coming from the west, and all about Numenor. And but then he ties in modern things like there were dark-haired people who were Latin, who are not Latins. Are the Portuguese Latins? What is Latin? I wonder what kind of people live in Portugal and Spain and Ireland and Britain in old days, very old days, before the Romans or the Carthaginians, before anybody else. I wonder what the main thought who was the first to see the Western Sea, and then he fell asleep and dreamed. And so, that's setting it all up. So, yeah, it makes me want to reread it. It's been a decade since I read it.
Okay, so from this is Hawk's copy of Volume 9 of The History of Middle-earth, and it's Sauron Defeated. But it also includes on page 154, so this is, I don't know if that's showing up okay.
You can see how you're doing.
Okay, right. Yes. Something like that. So the Notion Club papers?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just briefly refer to this here. It's kind of an interesting concept because what Tolkien does is he says, oh yes, let me tell you about these papers that were found. And I'll just read this forward, which is hilarious. So this is Tolkien writing in the 1940s about the distant future. These papers have a rather puzzling history. They were found after the summer examinations of 2012 on the top of one of a number of sacks of waste paper in the basement of the examination schools at Oxford by the present editor, Mr. Howard Green, the clerk of the schools. They were in a disordered bundle, loosely tied with red string. The outer sheet, inscribed in large Lombardic capitals, Notion Club papers, attracted the notice of Mr. Green, who removed them and scrutinized them. Discovering them to contain much that was to him curious and interesting, he made all possible inquiries without result. And then he skipped through part of this, and it says, the minutes or reports covered probably about 100 meetings or nights during the years of the last century, approximately 1980 to 1990. It is, however, not the least curious fact about these papers that no such club appears to ever have existed. Though certain resemblances are inevitable between a group of imaginary academic persons and the real contemporaries, no such persons as those here depicted, either with such names or such offices or such tastes and habits, can be traced in the Oxford of the last generation or of the present time. The author appears in one or two passages and in the occasional notes to identify himself with the character called in the dialogues Nicholas Guildford. But Mr. J.R. Titmass, the well-known historian of 20th century Oxford, who has given all possible assistance to the present editor, has shown that this is certainly a fictitious name and derived from a medieval dialogue at one time read in the schools of Oxford. And then it goes basically through. So again, it's this, like, he's pretending that there's this body of evidence or body of papers
right.
that he's pulling from.
It's very, H.P. Lovecraft did a lot of that with his Cthulhu series.
Right, that he's discovered.
Exactly. The Necronomicon.
Right. What's really funny here is that he actually calls it at the very beginning when Christopher Tolkien in the introduction says, so I found my father's various copies of the Notion Club papers.
Right.
So it becomes papers about somebody else's pretended papers.
Right.
And he actually, get this, Tolkien's original copy or title, he originally was going to call it Beyond Lewis or Out of the Talkative Planet. You get it? He's out of the silent planet. This is out of the talkative planet.
That is so funny.
And then he changed it to the Ramblings of Raymer, and it became eventually the Notion Club papers.
Volume 12 that I can't remember the title of, volume 12 in that series, was they had there was a short section where he was talking about where he was trying to do kind of something similar and write in the equals into the history of Middle-earth.
Right.
But he found himself unable to.
People 12.
Right. There's a section where he's talking about the inkwells, and he had to abandon that idea because it wasn't working out for him.
I think the Notion Club
it's a very small section and pretty good.
Right. I think what's fascinating is that Tolkien here is writing a group of imaginary people having a conversation, and yet he would actually be really good at being able to do this because the Inklings was very much like this.
Right. Well, and you know, like we're doing
That's
with the society.
he was basically basing it directly off of it.
Right.
So that forward, was
Do you-
it fictional or?
Do you know, can you find that at all? Or
I have no idea.
it's not in the index.
Oh, it's not?
I think it'd be great fun as a project, maybe, I don't know, by like next summer to have read that and discuss it, because it's, you know, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is to see the thinking of Tolkien in a time, and it's very much, they're kind of, he and his colleagues are kind of sparking each other's ideas.
Yeah, feeding off each other.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, there's,
That's the joys of intellectual sharing as opposed to intellectual
It is in the
isolation.
index.
And you know, oh, okay.
The Inklings.
Well, the Inklings, I thought you said the Inkwells.
Um,
Well, yeah, no, the Inklings, yeah, they're well known. Yeah.
That's basically an early version of those papers, but it's set as a Hobbit scholar
Right.
looking
Yeah.
through the papers.
Yeah.
oh, really? Fun. So those are his three main, I think those are the only ones
Yeah,
that actually mentioned
yeah,
in the
and
letter, in the
what we
letter
were
here,
reading.
in letter 105.
Yep.
Tom, are you still there?
Oh, yeah, he's there.
Is there anything
Yes, I'm here.
else that you want to refer to or talk about that
Did
was
you want to comment, Tom?
in this letter?
No. One thing that's interesting about the Notion Club papers is that they meet on Thursday nights, which is the same night that the Inklings used to meet at Magdalen College in C.S. Lewis's rooms.
Oh, okay, nice little bit of trivia there.
And an even stranger bit of trivia is all of the dates that he gives for the meetings in 1986, 1987, which is when the papers supposedly it all happened. He says they're all Thursdays. Well, I'm just weird enough to look things like that up. They're all actually Fridays. So in a story about time travel, he got the dates wrong. And I haven't decided whether it's a joke or just a screw up.
Yeah, I don't know. We didn't have the, digital lookup of calendars and stuff.
I don't
so-
know. It could be an alternate history where the calendar shifted.
Hey, Tom, that's quite interesting because it could be him pulling a joke.
It could be.
He is very capable of that.
Yes, he is.
If you look in the Sauron Defeated, and you look at Christopher Tolkien's introduction to Notion Club papers, he says that his dad, in letter 105, said it took him about a fortnight. And he says there's no way that he could have written all of his notes in a fortnight. So he says he thinks that his dad, looking back, got the dates wrong.
Revisionist in
Yeah.
history there, yeah.
Or just misunderstood.
Yeah, yeah.
We need to talk about his comments about his health. I think that's relevant.
Yeah, and I've talked about this repeatedly about because I have been ill, worrying, overwork mainly, but a good deal recovered. So I've commented before, and whether this is just the nature of that academician setting, or if it's something with him, it almost seems like a manic depressive cycling between his bouts of intense, furious work, doing all these things, and then collapse, and then recovery, and then intense, and it may just be, that's the nature of being in, school because of the way that, you things build up to midterms and finals and papers, and then you get the summer off and all that. So, but it's always seemed like a very, more modern terms, bipolar. As we read through these letters, you watch him oscillating between periods of high productivity, juggling work, doing all this stuff, cranking on the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings or whatever is on, multiple projects simultaneously, and being productive, to periods where he tries over and over and over and can't get anywhere with it, several months at a time, just keeps alternating back and forth between these fluctuations. And his health getting, worse and worse with each fluctuation from it. And it's just something I've always wondered. If I had the time, which I don't, I wanted to go through and try to graph on a timeline where he reported, where you see him doing lots of work and where he's not getting anything done, where he's sick and where he's not, and if patterns, emerged and if there was any regularity to it, and if it's synchronized to the academic calendar as doing that, right? Or if it was separate from that and maybe his own cycling. I've just always wondered.
I haven't noticed anything like that with my brother, who teaches at a university.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, he's clearly a person with an intense drive, and not everybody who goes to school has that same level of drive that he did to try to do these other things outside work. And so that, that would be a little different.
I think,
Snapshot.
Hawk, I think it's a combination of the career and mental personality, and I think that's what brings it about. I've read a very interesting blog post by this guy that I actually put the link on last month's notes.
Okay.
And it's a guy called Bruce Charlton, and he says this about the Notion Club papers. He says, what follows are my speculations about the nature of Tolkien's psychological breakdown, 1945 to 1946. My impression is that this was mostly a matter of alienation brought on by overwork. In sum, Tolkien was so busy, so hassled, so distracted that he had become cut off from the source of his creativity. The source of his creativity from which he had become cut off was in dream and trance states in which he experienced images having special significance. These images were, I believe, often visualized as described by the NCP character Raymer, that means Notion Club Papers character, and later the other character, Jeremy, from the Notion Club Papers, but also were related to language of words and text fragments as described by the NCP character Loudham. Writing that Notion Club Papers was therefore partly a distraction from his miserable emotional state, but partly it was a therapeutic quest, a successful attempt at self-healing. To be more specific, Tolkien, I believe, found himself so busy and worried by imposed tasks that for the first time in his life, and probably the last, he was unable either to dream or daydream, or else unable to connect his daydreams, with the rest of his life, and so his life felt meaningless and lost its purpose. Fortunately, Tolkien seems to have understood very well what he was going through and why, and his response was to take some time away from work, at least 3 weeks, have a complete change of scene, to create as much unstructured time as possible, and via the Notion Club Papers to return to his roots, his deepest and most spontaneous motivations, aiming to rebuild from this firm foundation. His response to have a significant effect, but was completely successful, so much so that the NCP novel lost its raison d'etre and was abandoned unfinished. And I think that's amazing, because what that's really suggesting, if he's correct, is that Tolkien, through writing what's essentially a role-playing novel of different characters talking through things,
meta,
was basically, yes, and therefore that was therapy to him. I mean, there is something for you to do.
What's that from?
This guy named Jeremy, or Bruce Charlton.
Okay, and you already linked to it last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sort of from my experience with writing this book, I go to a writer's group that meets once a month, and their methodology is, we think of a plot, we write down a plot line and everything, and I'm not doing that. I'm writing scenes, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm taking my experience as a GM and using that to write the book. So basically, I'm running a game without any participants.
Right. Did you ever watch that I talked about over and over?
No.
So you have.
Yes.
Okay, that was sarcasm. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, as I said, I'm medicated and sick right now, so I have to make sure.
Well,
so like that's what in Gamers 2, Darkness Rising, Lodge, the game master, is trying to write a story based on the adventure, but they can never finish the adventure, and so.
That's not the problem for me. The problem is I can only write scenes that I have a vivid image of.
Right, that take you, the muse, and the muse grabs you, yeah. Interesting.
And when I get beat down by
Well,
things in life.
Right, and like Robert Jordan was writing his stuff based originally on his campaign. The whole Dragonlance thing was intentionally written, the story and adventures released together, and there's a number of examples where that's inspired people. Yeah, so that's really neat. Well, we're wrapping up now. It's now 3 o'clock. There's still more we can definitely discuss. Let's give Tom, do you have anything before we finish up today?
Say that again.
Do you have anything else you would like to contribute before we wrap up today?
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you so much for contributing and participating. Really appreciate it. So a thought occurred to me as you were reading that. Should we move this to Thursdays? Thursday nights?
Maybe Fridays.
Yeah. just to be in keeping with that, I mean, if the Inklings are meeting Thursday nights.
Yeah, but see, Thursday nights would be Thursday mornings here, so then, when is Thursday?
Yeah, I know, depends on where you are, yeah.
I would be.
We'd have to use GMT time, huh?
It'd be fun, but I wouldn't be able to come. It's been great to have you with us, Tom. We hope you'll come back.
We hope you'll be a regular. We've really enjoyed your participation and your being here, so thank you so much. And any of you who've been watching the stream or catch this later on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars, or our website, tolkienscholars.org.
Next meeting is second Saturday, it's October 10th.
October 10th, 1 p.m. Pacific time to 3 p.m. Pacific time. You will get this meeting notes will be up there at some point. Sometimes it's the same day of the next meeting. But
They're almost done.
Oh, excellent. And there's the delay on my end too. Brian does a wonderful job with the notes. We are an actual SMEAL of the UK Tolkien Society. Several of us are actual members of the UK Tolkien Society.
All of us here are actually.
Yes. And we really welcome, as Tom did, just joining in and the conversation and contributing either through text or directly through dialogue with Google Hangout. And really look forward to those of us who can join us. We're meeting now at my house. How are you guys liking this? I mean, we've been doing it now a few months. You still like it?
Very comfortable.
Okay, because we did it at coffee shops. We always had problems with the internet and noise and other
I miss
things.
the coffee.
Yeah. I'll have to get a
And espresso machine.
Somebody will have to park their van outside. We can go out and order.
But yeah, it seems to be we'll keep doing it. And again, others are welcome to join. There's people on the Spokane meetup for Tolkien Society. Keep getting added to. There's about 40 members.
How did Tom hear about us?
Yeah, Tom, how did you come across us?
Actually, it was Jerry Burns who invited me back in February the first time I showed up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us again, and we hope you can make it next time.
I hope so too.
And all of you, wherever you may be well. Namaste.
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 And stop.